So shall we start? Okay. He's talking on page 50 about the Earth Mother, the Earth Goddess, who is really toiling across the sands of time. Man on the earth is trying to understand why is there a divine sanction to suffering, God's sanction to the paradox of life, because this life is always accompanied by death. Why does the divine, who is the immortal, accept to be born in a mortal framework? All this is the cause of our torment, because we are divided into something that wants to come out of this and something that accepts our limits and our weaknesses. So that is why, alarmed by the sorrow dragging at her feet, and conscious of the high things not yet won, ever she nurses in her sleepless breast an inward urge that takes from her rest and peace. Because that is one of the also blessings of being born as a human being. The thing is that we are not satisfied with the way things are. But we don't know how to come out of this limit. The lower beings accept their state, but man does not. The earth does not allow man to forget that he is part of the lower creation. And at the same time, there is always somewhere an aspiration to come out of this state. And so this is an inner war which she is always fighting, and she doesn't know how to win, but she won't give up. Ignorant and weary and invincible, she seeks through the soul's war and quivering pain the pure perfection her marred nature needs, a breath of Godhead on her stone and Maya. This is why she has this soul's war, he calls it. From within there is something that is at war, the quivering pain. And yet the soul insists on forcing man to look up to perfection. And she knows, somewhere earth and man both know, that if he can find that, if she can find that highest source, there will be no longer suffering. But she doesn't continue all the time to seek. We don't always aspire, we forget, we fall back into our sleep, into our weakness. And so this state goes on and on. A faith she craves that can survive defeat. The sweetness of a love that knows not death. The radiance of a truth forever sure. This is what she seeks. This is what Mother has told us, that that is one of the most important characteristics of the human existence. The need at some point in his life to evolve, to come out of what he is into what he can become. He doesn't always evolve, but the need is felt. And when this pressure becomes very strong, then that is really the answer. That is the pure perfection, the radiance of a truth forever sure. Because our mental argumentation and logic, they have answers and solutions for everything. We find explanations and reasonings to accept our weaknesses, accept our failures, accept our darkness, and say, well, that's the way we are. And yet somewhere there is always a we are not that. Our origin is the divine, then why are we so far from the divine? So this inner war goes on and on and on. Gradually, in spite of everything, there is an evolution, very slow. Always there is a dawn that breaks out of the night. A light grows in her. She assumes a voice, slowly. Assumes a voice, she becomes more conscious of her inner being. In fact, that is for each of us to pursue in our own way. There are so many things within us, so many capacities and so many pushes and pulls and aspirations and refusals. It is for each to find what to reject and what to accept. It's like the life becomes a journey, a battle, where you have to find what is the solution to the war. Only that war which really leads to pain and death and failure. She craves that faith. She craves the sweetness of a love forever sure. Man wants love. Man wants happiness. But he also knows this is not going to last. Nothing lasts. So on the one hand, there is something that has already accepted to be defeated. And yet the call goes up. Gradually a light grows in her. She assumes a voice. Her state she learns to read, and the act she has done. Her state she learns to read. We don't realize that we don't read ourselves. We often make explanations for our own nature. Gradually we have to eliminate. This is why Mother insists constantly on sincerity and not giving the explanation that we prefer to have. And that is when we really know where we are heading, if we are moving forward or not. Because it's always otherwise easier to find some kind of a acceptable explanation to whatever we are. And say, we can't help it, this is the way things are, this is the way the world is, this is the way everything is. We can help it. And Mother's insisted on that so often. We can, it's up to us, up to man, not the gods, and not the lower creation. Man. Man is the intermediary being. Man has to decide which way he will take, whether he will climb the upward path or whether he will slide down. But the one needed truth eludes her grasp. But the one needed truth eludes her grasp, herself, and all of which she is the sign. That is the one needed truth, to know herself, to be conscious, to know yourself, without cheating, without excuses, without finding explanations that are comfortable to accept. An inarticulate whisper drives her steps. Some voice within pushes us forward. It's a small voice. Mother speaks of the presence of the divine within us as a small presence. In fact, it is not a small presence, but we have turned our gaze away, so it moves into the background. And in the background, that presence is always there, but the further we have moved away from it, the smaller it seems to become. An inarticulate whisper drives her steps, of which she feels the force, but not the sense. This is the half-consciousness of our nature. We feel something, but we don't know what. Why? We love immortality. We love freedom. We love God in a way. Light too. But we accept the opposite all the time. So, a few rare intimations come as guides. Now and then, intimations are like messages. You have inspirations, intuitions, flashes of vision. They do come. It is not that mankind is completely a mental race. Man is also open when he allows himself to become open to other influences, the higher ones also. Now and then there has not been any age when the prophet and the seer and the rishi have not been born. In the earth's history, every age has had beings who are representations of and those who speak about the greater truth which man can really embody. If a few men, even one man, as Sri Aurobindo says, can embody that kind of existence, that means it is possible. That's why we have one line later here, that one man's perfection still can save the world. If one man can do it, that means it can be done. Most of us seem not to make that effort, but that doesn't mean it cannot be done. A few rare intimations come as guides. Immense divining flashes cleave her brain. The brain is an instrument of thought and logic, and these always divide truth into right and wrong, true and false. And then there are moments of direct contact with the Supreme. These are called divinations, flashes of vision. And we are very fortunate that this has happened repeatedly in the land which is ours. There has never been an age when these rishis have not been born. That means the guidance is so present, so much there. And now and then, these divining flashes cut her brain to filter into his nature, into his being, into his vital, into his very body, that sometimes in her hours of dream and muse, the truth that she has missed looks out on her as if far off, and yet within her soul. Sometimes in her hours of dream, which is not, he perhaps uses the word dream because it is not something that is explicable by reasoning. Muse also, musing, meditation. Muse is inspiration, like the muses actually themselves were the goddesses of inspiration. And so there are moments where inspiration, which is like a breath, inspiration really means breathing in. So we are filled with another breath, another power. That beautiful passage of Sri Aurobindo where he says, there are moments when the Spirit moves among men and the breath of the Lord is abroad upon the waters of our being. There are moments like that. We have to open to that breath. It will fill us. And so sometimes in her hours of dream and muse, the truth that she has missed looks out on her as if far off, and yet within her soul. It is not far off, but we think it is. So, for instance, later in the experience of the adoration to the Divine Mother, it says, O bliss who livest within, who lives deep hid within, while men seek the outside and never find. We do the outside, the performance of pujas and rituals and all kinds of expressions of our worship. The person whom you worship is your inmost self. She is sitting deep within us. Therefore, if we could turn within, we would find that she is the most intimate and absolute part of ourselves. We are that. The answers are not outside, the answer is inside. But we look for other things. If you do this, it will be all right. If you do that, you will find the divine. So you go on this religious pilgrimage or you do worship. It's all right if that satisfies you for a while. But actually the answer is inside, because she's waiting for us to turn to her. When that happens, there are even a few moments of divination and vision. The truth that she has missed looks out on her, as if far off and yet within her soul. A change comes near that flees from her surmise. That change, you cannot understand when and how I have changed. The surmise is your understanding, your guess. Mainly it is guesswork, because our mental understanding is always rather shaky. It keeps on changing our rules and regulations and beliefs and understanding. They are not stable, because we are ourselves constantly unaware of what we represent. But when, even for a little, for even a second, we turn to that and connect with that presence deep within, a change comes that flees from her surmise, and ever postponed compels attempt and hope. However, the mind will keep on postponing. Okay, so we will, that is the ancient idea that in the last part of your life you turn to the divine. Man, in the Indian culture, man had divided his time into 4. So the third was the Vanaprastha, the time he could give to meditation and solitude. And the last is really sannyasa. Always postponing it. It's very, very few that take their inner life seriously from the very beginning. You have to be very exceptional. So just like all the ancient rishis were. It is as if you are born a rishi. You don't become one. It is there inside us. Yet seems too great for mortal hope to dare. A vision meets her of supernal powers. Then she sees, earth sees, man sees, that we are not alone. We are surrounded by all kinds of forces and beings. If we open to their influence, we reach out to them, they are waiting to be called. They will help us forward. A vision meets her of supernal powers that draw her as if mighty kinsmen lost. They are our kinsmen. They are part of our family. I suppose we have somewhere the inkling, because if we look at the traditions that are there in the country, in India, you see the different, in society, some are descended from this rishi, that rishi, and something which is the Bharadwaj Muni and the Kashyap Rishi and all that. It's somewhere that it's been known that kind of, that those beings were our ancestors. We are all born from such ancestry. They are kinsmen. We are not born simply as mental beings. A vision meets her of supernal powers that draw her as if mighty kinsmen lost, approaching with estranged, great, luminous gaze. Estranged is that which has, when you have moved away from someone who at one point was very close to you. Man has turned away from the divine, but not fully. That is why, if you read the stories also of those who have, in our context, those who came and met Mother for the first time, not children, not those who accept without questioning, but those who were mental, well-educated people who had a great deal of faith in their own understanding. And then they went to Mother and they broke down. One and all. They fell to their knees, they wept, as if something in them broke the resistance that their education and training had built up around their natures. So essentially we are children of the divine. We are children of God. But we have put that knowledge, trapped it in some kind of a deep cell somewhere in our being, and our gaze is turned outwards. That is why it is ever postponed. But when she accepts, she in the sense the Earth Mother, and it is through the human being that the Earth Mother proceeds in her journey, then is she moved to all that she is not, towards those realizations that she has not yet arrived at, and stretches arms to what was never hers. That is why we want, as the first paragraph of the Life Divine tells us, that the earliest preoccupation of man is God, light, freedom, immortality, bliss. This is man's call. He has been asking for this. He has not found it. But he's asking for that. So she stretches arms to what was never hers, outstretching arms to the unconscious void. Passionate she prays to invisible forms of gods, soliciting from dumb fate and toiling time. Soliciting here is to beg. What does man beg for? What most she needs, what most exceeds her scope. What is it that she needs? A mind unvisited by illusion's gleams. That is something that we who rely so much on our minds, on our understanding, we don't realize how, if we accept half a truth, because mind always divides everything into two, at least if not more parts, and we take the part that is preferable to us as the truth and the other as not true, we are falling into falsehood. Error and falsehood. It's a conscious choice of falsehood. That is illusion. So that kind of mind that has no you might say, I can't say precondition, but things that we have decided from before. This is right. This kind of mind that is open, wide, vast, as vast as the sea, as vast as the earth that opens out below the sky. And sometimes it is physically true when you look far into the ocean. The ocean is touching the sky. Man is touching the divine. Earth is touching heaven. There is no limit, there is no line dividing one from the other. What most exceeds her scope, a mind unvisited by illusions gleams, a will expressive of soul's deity. Our willpower is often the expression of our ego, of our strength of character. If we can develop that, we are very happy with ourselves. But realize that my will is never mine. It is a gift, and I have to stay worthy of the gift that the Divine is giving us at all times. A strength not forced to stumble by its speed. This is what happens. If I have a lot of energy, that energy gives me a sense of self-importance and power, and for a while it is very successful. People with a lot of energy and power do achieve something. And then, after that, it evaporates. It doesn't always lead to a final success. A joy that drags not sorrow as its shade. Because that is our life. Joy and sorrow, life and death, success and failure, it's always divided. So this perfection, this is the pure perfection that earth is asking for. For these she yearns and feels them destined hers. Somewhere we say that is what we are. We are meant for that. Without understanding how and why. Heaven's privilege she claims as her own right. Heaven is that world, only of light, where there is no suffering, no death. That is our conception of heaven. Why do we always want to reach heaven? Because that is perhaps what we are asking for. So he says in the next line, just is her claim, the all-witnessing gods approve. This privilege of perfection and divinity is what we are really meant to become. Clear in a greater light than reason owns. The reasoning mind says this is not possible. But there is a greater light than reason and says, no, we are here to have a new humanity that Mother and Sri Aurobindo have repeatedly spoken of. A human being who is an embodiment of the divine. The two can blend and become an expression of the one. And because of this, we have always wanted somewhere to reach that world of perfection. Wherever there is imperfection, there is unhappiness. And we want to come out of unhappiness. Our intuitions are its title deeds. He's using a legal term. The fact that we have these flashes of vision and aspiration, these are intuitions, they are not logical. But the fact that they come into our consciousness is a title deed. Title deed is a legal term. It's a paper that proves that I'm entitled to this. This building or this house or this property, this wealth is mine. I'm entitled to divinity. It is my title. Our souls accept what our blind thoughts refuse. That is why in the book The Mother, Sri Aurobindo says, follow your soul and not your mind. Because then the mind will often stop halfway or take us on the roads that do not lead to perfection. That dream of perfection, the mind will call an impossibility. Earth's winged chimeras are truth's steeds in heaven. Chimeras, it's a word which means something that did not exist. It's a winged horse, which was half horse and half eagle, and power and energy. So these are when man or the poet or the visionary or the rishi, he speaks of that, people laugh and say, this is not possible. But these are the truth steeds. These are those visions that will lead us towards the final realization. The impossible, God's sign of things to be. What we call mentally impossible, and yet they come to us in our dream, in our vision, because they are the sign of things to be, the future humanity. Okay.